Hey, this is Cavallo from datingadviceguru.com. So you're standing there and you're talking and you're making flirty eye contact with that cute guy from marketing, over a cup of coffee or that latest episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And it's right about now, you'd probably love to know what signs a man is attracted to you at work. Am I right or am I right? Well, that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about signs a guy is attracted to you at work. And one quick second before we get rocking and rolling here with today's show, go ahead and make sure you do the big three. Number one, like and subscribe to the videos. Number two, make sure you turn on reminders so you know exactly when I'm going to put up the next one. And number three, make sure you leave me your questions and comments below. Look, knowing if he's interested would at least help you to figure out if you've got a shot at this guy, right? It's only natural to look for signs of attraction because nobody wants to put themselves out there and then be embarrassed when the other person doesn't really want them back. And with so many subtle body language signals out there he could be giving you, you gotta know which signs he's gonna give off that you need to pay attention to. Now these days, you also have to be aware of all the rules and limits about romance in the workplace too, right? As if we don't have enough problems. You don't want to invite his interest and then get in trouble with HR about it later on. Well, rule number one is just keep it secret. This is really important. Seriously, you'll be really tempted to let all of your girlfriends know about your little taboo coupling and relationship with this guy, if it develops, of course, but don't talk about it to everybody. First of all, if it doesn't work out, you won't have to risk your reputation or your job. This is a very real risk out there and you got to be concerned about it. Second of all, if there are other people who are more ambitious, let's just say, and less scrupulous at your workplace, you might find yourself in a bit of a scandal if they found out, right? Those talky type people. Take it from a guy who's been there. You don't want the added drama. I dated two women very seriously for several years from previous jobs. No, not at the same time. And one of those relationships was in an office where we only had 4 other people working with us. It wasn't that easy keeping it a secret, but we had to. If your romance goes well, eventually one of you can either request a transfer or leave the company or see if they are okay with it. But I wouldn't kid you about how difficult that decision could be. So just remember, loose lips sink ships. Keep your romance where it belongs, between you and him only. Rule number 2 is take it slow. There's no rush here. If anything, you have to be extra cautious about moving forward. You're in a very delicate situation. Yeah, I know, you want to get this thing going from 0 to husband in 60 days, just so you can reveal to everybody and impress them with the guy that you caught, right? But you really have to be more cautious, especially with all the complications that could come up if things go sour on you. Plus, you have to be aware that you can have a flirty attraction with somebody for a long time at your workplace. It can build up a whole bunch of pressure and a whole bunch of excitement, and then when you finally go out, you go a little too far. So don't jump in so fast either. Rule number 3, never with the boss. Come on, I know this one should be common sense, but if there's one thing you should never be doing is dating your boss or dating a subordinate. In fact, it's best if you don't date anybody in your same department, even if they're a peer. And absolutely no workplace romance ever with a married man. All right. If he gets promoted or if you got promoted, then you get extra weirdness on top of that. And let's get real here. How long do you think your coworkers will take to figure this out? And when power dynamics enter into your romantic relationships, it causes more problems and complications. Stuff you don't need. Rule number 4, be cool. If things are good or bad between you while you're dating, be sure to never show this at work. This is a classic mistake that the kids in the workplace make all the time. But anybody over 30, and definitely if you're over 40, should never make the mistake of getting emotional in the workplace about another person, another partner, or whoever you're dating. First of all, it's a sign of immaturity when you can't control your emotions. If management was kind of letting you get by on it, if they start seeing you jeopardize the workplace, they're going to clamp down on it real hard, okay? So don't be that person that can't control their emotions in the workplace. All right, now let's get into those signs. Clear sign number 1 that he's physically attracted to you at work. He's locked on. When it comes to signals that a man is interested in you, nothing is as important as eye contact. You may know this intuitively, but you might not remember why. You see, there are over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution of guys and women being on this planet, and Mother Nature has made sure that men developed pretty keen eyesight. But one thing men are exceptional at figuring out is if you're an attractive prospect for a mate by looking at you. And when a guy sees a woman he thinks is a sexual contender, can I use that word? He's spellbound. Men are literally turned into complete robots and idiots when they see a beautiful woman that makes them feel that Yeah, baby. Physical attraction, okay? It shuts down our usual bravado and it makes us slaves to your beguiling beauty. Slaves to your beguiling beauty. If you see that this guy can't take his eyes off you as he's talking to you, it's an obvious sign he's interested in you, especially if he's doing something that requires his attention, like clearing a printer jam or making some coffee. Sign number 2, you've got his attention. He asks you about non-work stuff. This one's pretty simple, but it's also big and it's often overlooked. When you're at work, the primary topic of conversation is usually work. But if he's curious about your life outside of work, that's a clear sign that he's thinking about you when you're not there with him, which means, yeah, what's it going to be like with him, with you outside of work? It's how men start asking you as a person to develop some rapport and connection. It's not subtle, but it does work. After all, if he keeps talking about work-related stuff like projects and meetings, he'll never get that personal connection going with you. And if he only talks about work with you, well, that's another sign that he might not be interested, right? But when he starts wondering about your weekends and free time, it's a definite sign he's interested. Go for it. Sign number 3, he's interested. He's normally a shy guy. When a guy who is normally quiet and reserved starts flirting and talking with you, that's a really good sign that he's feeling attraction for you. A lot of guys get nervous around women, sure, but for a shy guy to actually chat up a female coworker, that takes a lot more motivation and a lot more guts on his part, which also tells you just how into you he must be. If he's pretty awkward around you, that's also another indication that he's venturing out of his comfort zone with you. When we don't want to mess it up with somebody, we guys that is, when we don't want to mess it up with somebody, we often get really awkward and goofy in social situations. Actually, come to think of it, women do this too. All kinds of weird, quirky behavior shows up in otherwise normal guys when they have to actually face up to being the guy that has to make something happen with a woman. And awkward behavior is always a clear sign of interest that you're on his mind. Sign number 4, you're on his radar. Enter the green dragon. One of the telltale signs of a guy being interested in you is when he gets jealous of other guys in your life. If you casually mention a man's name, you'll sense that his interest starts to change in tone, right? He'll suddenly have a very concerned edge to it. He'll ask you different questions. It's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. He's basically just saying he wants that special place in your heart. He may even ask you questions about this other guy in your life with a cautious tone. Stuff like, oh, who's that? Your boyfriend? Or he'll get a little snarky with, wait, you were hanging out with Jerry from accounting? The guy with the bad ties and smelly cologne? Or he just gets really quiet when you mention some guy that is not him. See, jealousy may not be attractive, but it sure as heck is obvious when it shows up in the room with you. You'll get the clear sense that his mood and his interest has changed and that there might be an edge of defensiveness there. He might even sulk a little bit. Hey, no one ever said guys were above some immature emotional reactions, right? Deep inside, he's trying to plan a way to get into a long-term relationship with you. Sign number 5, he wants to be your best man. The nonverbals show up. The nonverbals are not a family. No, they are actually signs of indications of interest that are body signals usually, or sometimes things he says. You see, when a guy starts having a sequence of nonverbal reactions to you, you can bet he's trying to contain his attraction for you. Some of the distinct nonverbal signs you might encounter are blushing. That's an involuntary response. Heightened social sensitivity, that's what makes us blush, and it's one of the best indications of a guy's interest. Strong eye contact, we talked about that. Exaggerated laughter and body gestures, sometimes bad jokes. He's probably intimidated by you, which only adds to this dynamic of awkwardness. Leaning in and staying a little bit closer than a friend might. Preening, that's where he's straightening his clothes, adjusting his hair. Sweaty, yeah, some guys sweat profusely when they're around a woman they're attracted to. I had a guy that I coached once who literally had to hold a sponge, I'm not kidding you, because he sweat so much. It can happen. Fumbling, nervousness shows up as a certain amount of clumsiness, so watch for that, especially if there's hot liquids involved. Now, there are tons more signs like that, but the most important thing is catching a few different ones happening at about the same time. This is what I call a flirt flood. It happens when a guy is overcome with his physical desire for you, and he subconsciously wants to act out to relieve the tension he's experiencing in his body. All guys go through this, but few women know what that situation is actually all about. Hey, now you do. Sometimes these nonverbal signs might even contradict each other, and that's what can be really confusing if you don't know what to look for. Trust your gut. You'll get a distinct sense of emotional and sexual charge from him if this is the case. Sign number 6, I'm leaving for you to find over at the site at datingadviceguru.com. Just check it out in the article. Sign number 7, he's looking to connect. He's looking for any excuse to talk to you. Another one of the obvious things he's romantically interested in you is when a guy goes out of his way to get into conversations with you. It's pretty simple, really. It's simple, stupid. Guys make excuses to talk by using questions. So watch for this when he asks you random questions that seem kind of weird and out of the blue. Like, hey, you ever seen the show Bob's Burgers? You? No, I don't think so. Him? Yeah, right. Just curious. Now again, he just didn't have anywhere to go with that conversation. It was a little weird, but that's what he was trying to do, start it up. Another good sign is when he shows up wherever you are on a regular schedule to talk with you. For instance, every day after lunch or first thing in the morning at your desk. Sometimes you might even get confused because he's been up to this behavior for a while, but he still hasn't asked you out yet. This is often the case in the workplace because A, he's really concerned about the appearances and the possibility of getting into harassment charges. He wants to be really sure. And B, he's still working up his courage to bust that move. So if you're wondering if he really is attracted to you because he hasn't initially done something or initiated something, don't be fooled. Plenty of guys are terrified of rejection, and that means that they're going to want to make sure you're really interested before he actually takes that chance. Sign number 8, he's got eyes for you, is that he helps you with your work. See, guys are very drawn to help women that they have a personal involvement with or interest in. It's the way that he proves himself to you. Yeah, it's also part of the guy's rescuer complex. Think of it like those old fairy tales, right? The fair maiden or the princess would give her suitors a quest to prove their desire for her, and if this knight went out and slayed a dragon for her, she's gonna know he's got what it takes. Well, the truth is that most guys will start giving themselves a few tasks to prove to you that he's worth it. So watch for that. Sign number 9, he's got the hots for you, is, hey there, pumpkin. Yeah, if there's one thing he shows you that basically saying he has a lot of attraction for you, it's when he starts coming up with pet names for you in the workplace. Maybe this guy's in the IT department, right? Information technology. He comes over to fix a problem with your computer. He finds a bunch of music from 90s boy bands on there. I don't know how those got there, but yeah. And from then on, what does he do? He starts calling you Miss NSYNC or his Backstreet Girl, right? It can make you roll your eyes after a while of hearing it, but don't let it annoy you. Just realize what he's trying to do. He's trying to find a way to flirt. Plain and simple. Now, sign number 10 has a lot more about that, about how men use teasing to also show you they're interested, and I'll let you discover that one also at the site. Go on over to datingadviceguru.com. Sign number 11, he's under your spell. He's got the deets. When a guy starts keeping track of the details about you, you can generally assume he's paying attention to you because he's into you. Guys don't store away random facts on just anybody unless they've got a personal interest in them. Now, you might find that he remembers important dates like your birthday. Don't worry, that'll stop as soon as you two start dating. Or if he's remembering things that are happening in your life, like you just started school at night, or you took a vacation, or maybe you're picking up your new car this week, he's going to remember that. And the point is, he's keeping track of you because you're important to him. And by keeping track of these things, he wants to prove that he'd be a good addition to your life. Another way he has the details is when he's the first person to spot a change about you, right? He might notice a new accessory or a new haircut or a bit of new jewelry or clothing. He'll point it out and you'll think, my, what sharp eyes you have, Mr. Wolf. Well, obviously the reason he spots these things is because he's mentally cataloging you. He's watching you, thinking about you, remembering the details. Don't get all weirded out. He's not going to turn into a stalker. That's actually very rare in the real world, meaning not Hollywood. We've all become fascinated with a person to the point where we just can't stop thinking about him, right? We've all had that person in our life where we get a little bit obsessed. And maybe a friend points it out to us and tells us, hey, you might want to back off a little bit. But that's the power of obsession in a man's brain. It can drive him to want to chase you relentlessly until he can basically sweep you off your feet and have you for himself. Now, there are ways to make men obsessed with you, thinking about you all the time, and you can do this using only words. If you'd like to know more about how to trigger obsession in a man's mind, go watch my short presentation. It's a little link you see below me here. Yeah, do it. Or click that little thing up in the corner that's showing up right now. Go on over and watch my short presentation on how to trigger a man's obsession for you. And of course, before you go, make sure you do the big 3, and that's like and subscribe to the video. Number 2 is, of course, turn on notifications so you know when the next one comes out, because it's coming out soon. And number 3, leave me your questions and comments down below. I do check them out. Hey, this is Cavallo from datingadviceguru.com, lively, animated, and at your disposal. I hope to be seeing you again next week, this time. As always, live and love with passion.